Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending session 2 of our Volunteer Income Tax Assistance or VITA training. My name is Nadia Wall. I'm the Community Impact Coordinator with United Way, and I also oversee the VITA program. I would like to say thank you to all of our volunteers this tax season. Without you, this program would not be possible. So thank you for all that you do. Today's session will go over the volunteer standards of conduct and the intake, interview, and quality review sections of the certification. Once again, these certifications are required by all volunteers. So as we work through today's sessions, we'll be looking at some sample questions from each of those certifications, as well as taking a deeper dive into what the process is for both of those. We'll also review the roles and responsibilities of the intake volunteers as we go over the standards of conduct. We'll take a closer look at the forms that are used during the process and go over required documents needed by the taxpayer. For the standards of conduct and the intake interview certifications, both of these tests are 10 questions. The volunteer must pass with a score of 80% or higher. If you fail the test, you will have the opportunity to immediately retest. You will be able to see which questions you got incorrect. However, the test and the retest do have different questions. And again, all those questions, the test questions and retest questions, can be found in publication 6477. It is important to remember to read the questions thoroughly, as wording may trick some people. If you fail the second test, however, you will not be able to become a VITA volunteer. The tests are not difficult. They are logical to what the program is and what we're providing. And Form 13615 will populate after you've completed all of your testing. And we'll go over that a little more in session 4. As a reminder, throughout the tax season, I may bring over to you some tax alerts that I receive from the IRS. These may be changes in tax laws, some errors that may be found in any of the publications that are presented, or it may be guidance that we need for public notice. So any tax alerts that come across, I will bring them to you at your location. So we'll begin by going to the VITA TCE Central, which is linklearncertification.com, and we'll begin by clicking on the VSOC Training tab. So when you click on the link, you'll be taken to the IRS publication 4961. And from here, you can review the VSOC as you prepare for your certification. The volunteer standards of conduct are located on the VITA website, as well as on the inside of every IRS publication you'll be using. So inside of the testing book, the 6477, and inside of the resource guide, the 4012, on the inside cover, the volunteer standards of conduct will be right inside of there as well. The purpose of this guidance is to provide a structure for regulating VITA, regulating the VITA program, volunteers, and to protect taxpayers, volunteers, and program partners. So now we'll take a look at what those standards of conduct include. The volunteer standards of conduct are as follows. Number one, we ask that you follow all quality site requirements. Those quality site requirements are things that I have to do on my end, making sure that everyone is certified, everyone turns in their 13615, that volunteer agreement, that the tax returns are filed in a timely manner, those types of things. Number two, we ask that you do not accept cash. You do not accept any form of payment, ask for donations, or accept refund payments from federal or state return preparations from customers. Sometimes people do get excited and they're very thankful and they want to show us how thankful they are by offering us some form of donation or payment, and we cannot accept those. Number three, do not solicit business from taxpayers you help or use the information you've gained about them for any direct or indirect personal benefit for yourself or any other specified individual or organization. So basically, we're asking that you do not take any information that you learn about the taxpayer and use it or give it to any other individual or any other organization. Number four, we ask that you do not knowingly prepare false returns. If there's something that comes up and you feel a little unsure, you can always speak with a site coordinator about any concerns that you have if you think something may be a false return. Number five, do not engage in any criminal, infamous, dishonest, disgraceful conduct, or any other conduct considered to have a negative effect on the VITA program. And number six, we ask that you treat all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. And those are the standards of conduct. Those are the things that you'll be tested over. So along with the standards of conduct, there are also, there we go, um, some repercussions if we fail to comply. And some of those include removal from all of the VITA programs, inclusion in the IRS volunteer registry to bar future VITA activities indefinitely. So there's a registry where someone's name can be put on there so they will not be able to be a volunteer. Deactivation of your sponsoring partner's VITA electronic filing identification number. That's a number that each location uses to identify themselves. Um, removal of all IRS products, supplies, loaned equipment, and taxpayer information from your site. Basically, what they're eventually going to do is close down the site. So we ask that you do not do anything outside of the volunteer standards of conduct so that we can continue the program. And then finally, referral of your conduct to the potential TIGTA, which is the Treasury Inspector General. Um, so yeah, please just stay within the standards of conduct. So now we're going to just review a few questions that were on last year's standard of conduct certification test. These questions may or may not be on the test this year. I don't know. Again, these are just questions that were on there last year. So let's take a look at question one. Max prepares a return for Allie at a VITA site. He finds out during the interview that Allie has no health insurance. After Allie leaves the site, Max writes down her name and contact information to take home to his wife who sells health insurance for a profit. Which of the following statements is true? A, there is no violation to the VSOC unless, unless Max's wife makes a big commission on the sale of health insurance to Allie. B, Max has violated the VSC because he is using information he gained about Allie to further his own or another's personal benefit. C, Max is doing Allie a favor by using her personal information to secure business for his wife. Or D, information a taxpayer provides at a VITA site can be used for the volunteer's personal gain. Which of those statements is true? The answer is B. Max has violated the VSC because he's using the information he gained about Allie to further his or another personal benefit. So we ask that you do not do that. Let's move on. Sorry about that. Question two, can a volunteer be removed and barred from from the VITA program for violating the standards of conduct? It's going to be an easy one. The answer to that is yes, you can. Question number 3. If a taxpayer offers you a $20 bill because they were so happy with the quality of service they received, what is the appropriate action to take? A, take the $20 bill and thank the taxpayer for the tip. B, tell the taxpayer it would be better to have the $20 deposited directly into your bank account from his refund. C, thank the taxpayer and explain that you cannot accept any payments for your service. Or D, refer the taxpayer to the tip jar located at the quality review and print station. The answer to that is going to be C, thank the taxpayer and explain that you cannot accept any payments for your service. Question number 4. Prior to working at a VITA site, all VITA volunteers must do the following, which pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct certification test with the score of 80% or higher, sign and date Form 13615, pass the Advanced Tax Law certification, D, all of the above, or E, both A and B. So before working at VITA as a volunteer, what must everyone do? The answer to that is going to be E, both A and B. Everyone has to pass with the 80% or higher, and you also have to sign and date that 13615 and get that to me with a copy of your valid ID. So that pretty much wraps up the standards of conduct certification. So now we'll move on to the intake and quality review portion. This section is a little bit more detailed. We'll look at the intake forms that volunteers will give to taxpayers and go over those forms. We'll look at required documents the taxpayer must have, review the tax preparer process. We'll go over some sample questions, and I will review some important questions from Form 13614 that we want volunteers to be made aware of. So for the greeter/intake position, the roles, we ask that you greet all taxpayers as they enter into the site and confirm their appointment times. Verify the taxpayer's ID, and if they are married and filing jointly, we will need both parties there at the appointment. You'll provide the taxpayer with Form 13614 and the state forms to complete. Once you receive those back from them, you just want to review the completed forms and just verify that they have their documents to prepare their returns. You'll determine their certification level for the return. You'll assign a return to the preparer based on their certification level, and you can direct any questions to the site coordinator or the appropriate preparer. And I just want to make sure to let you know that appointments are scheduled online only. And if a taxpayer happens to come to you with an appointment and they say, oh, I have 3 years worth of taxes to do, we will have to reschedule them for each of those tax years. We can only do one tax year per appointment. So the first form that you will be giving to the client is going to be the Indiana Intake and Quality Review Sheet. This is a simple form which is going to ask about their residency in the state of Indiana and then also their deductions. It's a really simple form they can fill out, and then they'll return that to you when they're done. Form 13614C is a 6-page form that the taxpayer will need to complete. The taxpayer should be instructed to complete the non-shaded sides of the form to the best of their ability. The gray shaded areas will be completed by the tax preparers. So page 1 here is just basic information um, to determine their filing status. Some of the questions that we want to highlight here on page 1 for our volunteers to be made aware of are questions like, did you work in 2 or more states in 2025? If they answer yes to that, we probably want to give them to an advanced tax preparer just because there's some different tax laws that go into each different state. Another important question on page 1 here is, can anyone claim you or your spouse on their return? Um, a lot of times we may have younger um, people coming in to file a tax return. They may be college students, and their parents may claim them on their return and they might not know that. So we want to make sure that that question is checked either yes or no. And if not, we do want to ask them, if their parents can claim them or not, or if someone else can claim, a spouse or anybody else actually on the return. And if they're unsure, that's fine. If they want to step to the side and maybe call their parents and say, hey, are you going to claim me on your tax return this year? And they can mark it either yes or no. The thing is that if they mark no and their parent files and their social security that person's social security number pops up, it's going to reject their return. So that's why we ask to make sure that this particular question is answered, and because we don't want to have to delay anyone's return. Another important section on page 1 um, is the section here regarding your marital status, if you've been divorced or married, or if you're widowed, things like that. These dates are important because they determine how a person should file. So somebody might be like, oh, I've, been divorced for how many ever years, 15 years. Well, please at least write the date on there so that we'll know, because you may have been, divorced for 6 months. And so that makes a difference in how you would file. Okay, so page 2 of the 13614 asks questions about income. And so the client will go down again the unshaded side of the form, and they will complete those questions that apply to them. So in our example here, we see that the person checked that they have, wages from a part-time or full-time job, and it asks how many, and that person put 2. Um, and so then we also see a little B right beside the question. So some questions have B, some questions have A, some questions have both. The A and B stands for advanced preparer or basic preparer. So this is how our intake volunteer will know how to assign that return for the preparer. Another thing to be mindful of is the second part of this question here where it says tips. Tips has an A and B next to it. Um, and so if they were to check that they had tips, and you would say to yourself, how would I determine if it's basic or advanced? And you look over here on the gray side here. I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, sorry. But on the gray shaded side, it says it's basic when reported on the W-2. So if they check that they have tips and the tips are located in that box on their W-2, that would be basic. They may say to you, I received tips and it was cash, and I have a ledger here of how I received the tips. Then that would be advanced. If it's reported on the W-2, it's basic. If they have that information, then it'll be advanced. Page 3 of Form 13614 is going to ask just expenses and tax-related events for each person. Once again, they're going to fill out the unshaded side as that pertains to them. And one particular question on this page we want you to be made aware of is the health insurance through the marketplace. Some people aren't sure what that is, so they may call it Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. This is another thing that will reject a return if they had it through the marketplace and they didn't mark it. If they didn't check it on here, it will flag and it will reject their return. So then we'll have to call them back and have them bring in that 1095-A form. Um, However, marketplace insurance is not like state insurance or Medicaid or Medicare. So if they say, well, I have it through my state, then they don't have to worry about that and they don't have to mark it. Pages 4 and 5 of the form. Page 4 is just some optional questions that they can answer regarding their status, their nationality, and things like that. Page 5 is a blank page for notes. If the intake volunteer has some notes they want to write down for the preparer to see, you can write it on that page there. And whenever the preparer brings back the client, they can see those notes that you made on there. And finally, the last page, page 6 of the form is called a global carry forward. This is giving permission for TaxSlayer, which is the service that we use to input the return, to make the taxpayer's information available to any VITA TCE site they may use in the future. So I put an example up here. If a taxpayer gets his 2024 return filed at the Opportunity Center in Evansville, and then this year he moves and he's going to go to Owensboro, and they have a VITA site there. This form allows the VITA site to pull up his information from the TaxSlayer to process his current return. They'll just be able to put his social security number in there and click a button and all his information will pop up. Of course, if there's any changes, they can make those changes. So I just wanted to make it known that this is not giving permission, um, it's not giving permission to sell any of the taxpayers' information or anything like that. It's just a form that says, hey, if you go from one VITA site to another, you're going to allow your information to be put in TaxSlayer. So upon completion, the client will return the forms to the volunteer. The volunteer will check to make sure the forms are completed and assign the return to a preparer. And again, you're going to know if it's a basic or advanced just by how the client marked the form. If there's anything on here that has an A on it, then you're going to put A at the top of their on page 1 of their form. So when the preparers come out to get them, they'll know if they're going to do a basic return or if that's going to be an advanced return. Um, Now we're going to look over some required documents that we want to make sure that the taxpayer has when they come in. So one of the most important pieces of information that the taxpayer is going to need is their taxpayer IP PIN. This is a 6-digit PIN number that the taxpayer registered for to help against identity theft. So not all taxpayers will have a number, but we just ask that you kind of mention it to them. You know, if they had a IP PIN last year, they are going to need that 6-digit PIN again this year. Um, and there will be some guidance, some sheets set out for them to retrieve that PIN number if they had one and may have forgotten the number. If married, filing jointly, both spouses must be present to sign forms. We'll need both people there. We'll need the proof of identification. These photo IDs must be valid, and exceptions can be made with the site coordinator. Um, some people have been coming to VITA for years, and they know quite a few of the site coordinators and volunteers there. So if they're like, oh yeah, I know that this is John Doe, even though his ID is expired, then that's fine. We can make an exception for that. We'll need to have Social Security cards or numbers for everyone that's going to be listed on the return. And then, of course, if not, if they don't have Social Security cards or numbers, then we'll need the I-10 or the proof of the foreign status if they're applying for an I-10. The taxpayers will need to have birthdays for their self, spouse, and any dependents. We'll need to have bank routing and account numbers for any direct deposits. They'll need to have their child care provider information, along with the amounts paid, and the length of time they've been paying child care. And they'll also need rental payment verifications, including the amount of rent that they pay for the year, the length of time they paid, and their landlord's name and address as well. And that information will also go on the Indiana intake form. Some more required documents, of course, are going to be their wage and earning statements, however they receive that, W-2, 1099. We just want to make sure that they have all of their forms that are required. Some people want to hurry up and schedule appointments and get in here before all the appointments get taken up, and they don't gather all of the W-2s that they need. And so we don't want them to have to reschedule an appointment to try to get in, or maybe even miss out um, on scheduling appointments because the appointments are booked up. So we just want to make sure that everybody has all of their W-2s. Any interest or dividend statements from the bank. Again, the health coverage forms, that's at 1095A, B, or C. And then any other forms that coincide with anything they have marked on the form. And again, we just want to make sure that we tell our taxpayers that, not having all the items is going to result in you having to reschedule your appointment. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time or manpower to be like, oh, I'm just going to run home and get it. I'll be right back. They're going to have to reschedule their appointments. So once the taxpayer goes back and meets with the tax preparer, our tax preparers will then they're going to go over the shaded side of the 13614 form. And here on this example, I don't know if you can see. Okay, yeah. So it says that this person says they have one full-time job. On the shaded side, we just want to make sure that, yes, that person does have the one W-2. If there's something that doesn't pertain to them, you can just mark no, you can put a check mark, you can put a slash mark, you can put a squiggly line, something to just indicate that you've reviewed that this person uh, doesn't have this information, or it doesn't apply to them. So now we're going to take a look at kind of like the process of when the client and the tax preparer meet. So the tax preparer, again, will take the client's information, the 13614C and the Indiana State intake form. You'll review that. You'll review the shaded sides with them, make sure they have everything that they need. You'll go ahead and enter in their information into the TaxSlayer system, of course, asking any pertinent questions. Once you've completed that portion, entering in the return, you're going to review their return with them, let them know what their return amount will be, or if they happen to owe the IRS, you would let them know how much they owe. Then from there, they're going to gather up their information, and they're going to move to another certified tax preparer. And you preparers will have this responsibility as well. What we'll do is we'll swap clients between tax preparers, so that way their return is going to be double checked by someone else. The tax preparer will have the client come sit down. You'll pull up their tax return, and you'll just go through each question once again, making sure that that first tax preparer didn't transpose any numbers. They may have skipped a step. They may have forgotten to add a child in as a dependent, anything like that. We just want to make sure that we catch as many errors as we can before we transmit the returns to the IRS, because we don't want those returns to be rejected. Then that causes us to have to call the client back, get the correct information, and then update their return, which may or may not um, cause a change in the refund amount. So that's why we do the quality, that's called the quality review step. That's why we do the quality review, just to kind of ward off any errors before we can get those submitted. So once you've done the quality review with that client, you will then go over any changes that were made, if any. You'll print off their return for them. You'll have them sign a few forms, and then you'll take the envelope number 730. You'll give them all their information in that tax envelope, where they can write their name on there, the site that they went to this year, and then which tax year it is. The most important thing to remember is that quality review must be done for each return that we do. Okay, so sometimes a taxpayer may have to wait a few minutes for someone else to get done with the client that they're working with, in order for them to go and be reviewed by somebody else. But everyone is very patient and kind, and they're thankful that this program is here, so they completely understand if they have to wait a few minutes before we can complete the entire process. So up next, we're going to take we'll take a look at a couple of the questions that are on the intake, interview, and quality review test. Again, these are questions from last year's test. They may or may not be on the test this year. They may have a different name, so like different names in the test. So let's take a look at question number 1 here. It says all certified volunteer preparers participating in the VITA program must use Form 13614C along with a thorough interview for every return prepared at the site. Is that true or false? The answer to that is true. So yes, all taxpayers, all clients that are coming in must complete the Form 13614. Question 2, what must a certified volunteer preparer do with the Form 13614 before starting the return? A, verify each taxpayer's response on the form. B, for any box left unchecked, write no or NA, or leave a check mark in the notes/comment section to indicate an item does not apply. C, determine the certification level required to complete the return, or D, all of the above. And the answer to that is D, all of the above. You want to make sure that when you picked up that client's 13614, that you are properly certified for whichever return they have. So if you're a basic preparer and you pick up an advanced return, you won't be able to process that return. We have to have an advanced preparer process that return. Question number 3, the basic certification level is required to prepare returns with unreported tip income. So if we look back on slide 16, I don't know if I can jump back to that. I don't think I can. So on slide 16, we saw that if the tip income is reported on the W-2, then it's basic. However, if they say they got cash and they have it written out how they got it, that would be advanced. So if it's unreported income, that's going to be advanced. And so this question is going to be false. The basic certification level is required to prepare return with unreported income. That's false. That would be an advanced certification level. A date must be entered on the form, page 1, to determine the appropriate filing status for taxpayers who are divorced, legally separated, widowed, or D, all of the above. And again, that's going to be D, all of the above. Again, those dates are important just so we can make sure they are filing appropriately. So that wraps up the training for the greeter and the greeter intake quality review section, and also the VSOC sections of this certification. So if that is what you're going to be volunteering as, if you're going to be volunteering as the greeter, then this training signifies that you can go ahead and move on to session 4. If not, we'll be moving on to session 3, where our site coordinators and preparers will be looking at the link and learn lessons and also the practice lab. In the link and learn lessons, we're going to go deeper into studying for these certifications, knowing who needs to file, who doesn't need to file, and things like that. They'll give you some examples. And then in the practice lab area, you'll be able to go over some training on what the TaxSlayer system looks like, what the TaxSlayer software looks like. You'll be able to take some practice returns and enter those in into things like that. And then in session 4, we'll look at the certification test and retest, how to log into that system and go and take your test for everything that you'll need to do. So once again, uh, here's my information. And if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. If you know of anyone who may be interested in volunteering for VITA, please give them my contact information as well. And I hope to see you all in the next video session. Thank you. Bye.